The Duchess's Tune, a burlesque. The Duchess was one of the most beautiful boys in the university, with his flowing chestnut-coloured hair and his thin-lipped, lascivious smile. He was called the Duchess because, although very camp, he did not have quite the regal regard of a regular royal queen, and also because one of his old boyfriends had been a duke, if you believe the stories they tell in the junior common rooms. This duke had presented him with an antique grand piano as a parting present before leaving England forever under a purple cloud and disappearing somewhere in the region of Tibet, where he was last heard of intoning with the best of the bassi profundi in a Himalayan monastery. The piano, then, crowded out most of the Duchess's less than spacious college room, but he could not bear to part with it, sentimental value and all that. He spent many an essay-weary hour tinkling aimlessly over its dusty keys. One evening, his tinkling bore strange fruit. A short 7-bar melody struck him as unusually attractive in an angular, irregular way, and he played it over several times. He rushed to get a piece of paper to write it down, and then proceeded to try and harmonize it. Try how he might, however, no harmony appeared to satisfy it. It swallowed up every attempt and begged for more. Obsessive and reaching out for ever wider experiences. Not for hours, but for weeks he tried and tried. His obsession with the tune was reflected also in his love life. He became hungry for almost anything that went in trousers. Nothing could compliment him, and nothing could satisfy his tune. His lovers often deserted him because of it. He had even developed a strange habit which made them fear for his sanity. The Duchess would hum his tune after every success at least 5 times. That's no way to keep a lover. The Duchess and the tune were therefore one and alone. 6 months later, at the start of the new university year, a young blonde violinist had joined the ranks. He heard about the mysterious Duchess, who by now had locked himself in an ivory-keyed tower in egocentric contemplation of his tune, breaking only to deliver the requisite essays on Pirandello or Flaubert. Nobody was able to quote the tune accurately to the violinist, so he decided to seek fortune or downfall by visiting this unique composer. Through the oak, he heard the strain of the melody, and since he had thought to bring his violin, he quickly tuned it up and improvised a counterpoint from the other side of the door. It was Love at First Cadence. The tune suddenly took on a warm fullness instead of feeling angular and empty at the corners. When the tune was done, the oak opened rapidly and the two boys fell into each other's arms as if they had known and loved each other for years. They disengaged and went once more to their instruments to play the tune over and over again, the piano taking over the counterpoint and adding to it, while the violin played the original tune in thirds and fourths. The awkward obsession of one had become the full-bodied darling of two. Gradually, they built up a repertoire to fill concert programs, but always ensuring that the Duchess's tune came at the end, as it had always done with his love-making. They also built up a reputation such that the concert hall managers were soon asking, inviting, begging, or even praying for them to come and play in their town, which thereafter hummed for days with the Duchess's tune, hummed accurately now, since the violinist had been able to make sense of it. In fact, it would have made the top 10, were it not for its rhythmical irregularity. Anyone trying to dance to it would end up with his legs crossed over and one hand stuck firmly down the back of his collar. Nevertheless, all the streets of Britain hummed with the tune as its fame spread, for it had symbolic powers, it both revealed that you were part of the late 20th century and consoled you for this distressing revelation. It was one of the signs of the age. Another of the signs of the age was the incessant desire of some of our species to climb up to high places where they couldn't even breathe properly. One such group of people, who were aiming to clear the highest peaks of the Himalayas in 1 year, wanted to raise funds for their expedition. The leader of this intrepid band was a great friend of the violinist and asked him if he were willing to play a fundraising concert for them. Thus it was agreed. The whole expedition was greatly moved by the playing, and in particular by the Duchess's tune. At least half of them fell in love with the chestnut-haired beauty at the piano, and the other half followed the violinist's fingers, not wishing to miss a single note. The rest of the audience applauded wildly as usual, but the entranced mountaineers sat motionless in the vain hope that the duo would play again. After the concert, they invited the two to a pre-expedition dinner and asked about the origin of the tune. The Duchess rhapsodized about the dusty old grand piano and the Duke, who had left him in order to follow the way. The violinist then continued the story by telling of the oak door and the very first transportal counterpoint. Much impressed, the team left for the east and conquered about 5 peaks in the first month, humming the tune as they went. One evening, however, the guides became fed up with the incessant humming of the Europeans and crept away to their families, leaving the madmen to their fate. The dawn saw a natural panic as our boys realized that they had been left lost up a mountainside, and with scarcely a minute to gulp down a coffee, they packed their bags and headed downhill as quickly as possible. After 2 days, they heard a low rumbling sound, as if of 1,000 snoring Yeti, and on turning the bend, they saw a building in the distance. Shelter! They made for it, scrambling, shouting and sweating, and finally collapsed gratefully on the floor of the little monastery. When they had gathered their strength, they set about joining in the daily tasks of monastery life. Having decided they needed a holiday after 5 peaks in a month, they began to learn the way in their own clumsy European manner. They did not forget their homeland, though, and the tune, which had helped them financially and spiritually on their path. One evening, in a fit of distraction during a meditation, the expedition leader found himself humming the tune very quietly. The pale-faced monk, who was supposed to be teaching them, stiffened and went a shade paler. He asked in clear, aristocratic English where that tune had come from. The leader described the Duchess in loving detail, and told his story about the Duke, the piano, and the violinist at the door. The monk became pensive for a while, then he laughed with a shrug of his shoulders. "I knew I should have had that piano tuned before I gave it to him," he chuckled, as he left the room as casually as he could.